Greetings! In this series of videos, I'll be giving you my own take on how to use a graphics library written in Java called processing. I'll start out by showing you how to draw simple things, how to make them move around, then we'll turn to how to respond to keyboard and mouse events, and finally we'll make some simple games. In this first video, I'll show you how to set up your project in Eclipse, but we won't do this again. So I've created a graphics experiment project. Why don't you go ahead and follow along with me? Inside the source folder, I'll create a new class, which I'll call Day1 Drawing Things. I do not want to create a main method. Ordinarily, the main method is where the computer would start running your code. Instead, we're going to do this. After the name of my project, we're going to say extends papplet with a capital P and a capital A. This is a term from processing. You can think about this as meaning graphics window. So when we say extends papplet, what we're really saying is that your program is a graphics window. The other thing you'll notice is that there's a compile time error here right now. That's because we have to actually bring in all of the code that says what does it mean to be a graphics window so that our program can use it. So a jar file is the name of a file that contains somebody else's Java code that we can use. And you have to import it. So, let me explain what I'm doing here. So I've selected my top level folder here, Graphics Experiments, and I'll right click and go to Properties. Inside Properties, you want to select Java Build Path, and then the Libraries tab, and then Add External Jars. If you check the comments section, I think I will probably link to a folder that gives you the jar files, but you can also download them straight from the processing website. On the processing website, they won't be called core v2 and core v3, it'll just be called core.jar. The problem is the way you structure your program is a little bit different depending on whether you have version 2 or version 3 of processing. I'll be using the older version 2, so I'll click core v2.jar, and I'll say OK, and I'll say OK, and now you can hover over papplet and say import. This is how all processing programs are structured. You have two methods. You have public void setup and public void draw. In setup, you first start saying what's the size of the window. So this will create a graphics window that's 600 width and 600 height. Setup runs exactly once at the very beginning when you first run your program. After that, this draw method runs in a loop, about 25 times a second or 30 times a second. You can make your own methods as well underneath, and we'll be doing that later. If you're using version 3 of processing, the only difference is instead of setup, you'd call this settings, and size would go inside settings, and then you have another setup method that goes underneath. Okay, so let's go ahead and make it do something, and then we'll look at how does the code make sense. So let's make public void setup, and we'll create a size. I'm going to make my window 600 by 600. And now, public void draw, and let's draw a rectangle. So the rect command is how you make a rectangle, and you don't know what these numbers mean, but you will in a minute. So if all has gone well, we should be able to run it, and we see a window, and there's a square, which is a special kind of rectangle, that's been drawn.